But we also wanted to touch on Donald Trump's peace plan for Gaza. He has called on Palestinians to take control of their own future. He says the peace plan would see the war come to an end, Israeli troops withdraw, and hostages returned.
The promise of a new Middle East is so clearly within our reach. This is the closest we've ever come to real peace.
The US president says he would lead a new transitional government made up of Palestinians and experts. I'm going to put inverted commas around that, like former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warns Israel will finish the job if Hamas does not agree to Trump's Gaza peace deal.
But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way. But it will be done.
That was Benjamin Netanyahu. International geopolitical analyst Geoffrey Miller joins me now. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Kerry.
How many peace plan proposals have you poured over in your lifetime?
Well, look, we've been through a few of them now. There was a French-Saudi plan that was released earlier this month. There was a Joe Biden plan in February last year. So we've been through a few of them. Look, it's a quite a complex deal. With 20 points, there's a lot of points to go through, and I think there is something in it for both sides here. Notably, Israel would get back all of the 48 hostages, 20 living hostages, 28 dead hostages, and Hamas members would receive this amnesty. They wouldn't be pursued by Israel any further. They would have a pathway to exile, and Israel would not annex Gaza. That's the big commitment being made. So there's something there for both sides, but it is a complex deal. I don't think we should write it off out of hand.
No.
Anything that's got peace written on it is a good thing, but I think it will be a hard deal still for Hamas to accept. And it's being presented to Hamas simply as a take it or leave it offer, and with a 72-hour deadline for Hamas to accept the deal effectively, or Israel will have Trump's full backing, as he says, to finish the job and destroy Hamas. It sounds quite ominous.
It really does. And it is a take it or leave it. And if they take it, Hamas, who will agree to that, will in effect be gone. You know, they will have to, disband, leave the country, leave Gaza itself. What, can they stand as individuals for any kind of public office, or is anybody associated with Hamas just gone?
Indeed, I think it would be the end of Hamas. That's certainly what Israel wants. And remember, that's Israel's goal with the war, is to exterminate Hamas. So I think that's the view from Israel here. I mean, Israel would see itself as being generous by allowing an amnesty to these members, and also by not going ahead with the full occupation of Gaza, which they're trying to conduct at the moment. Israel would withdraw under this plan to a buffer zone around the edge of Gaza. So it wouldn't be an absolute total withdrawal, but it would be largely withdrawal. But I think one of the big flaws to this plan, apart from the fact that Hamas hasn't been directly involved in the negotiation of it, and it's been negotiated just with Israel, one of the flaws is that there's no timeline here. So there's these different stages to the deal, but you won't find any timelines in this deal for when things are going to happen, when Israel will fully withdraw, when there will be a transition from this international force to a Palestinian-led force, police force, and there's language in the deal about providing a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, and that sounds really positive, but there's absolutely no real timeline for how that would be achieved, and you sort of wonder if it's just been added in to make it sound good, but if there's actually no credible pathway of getting there, you sort of wonder what's the point, and how can Hamas possibly accept something like this?
And speaking of credible, Tony Blair?
Indeed, and Tony Blair's involvement will be a red flag to many in the Middle East, and particularly in the Palestinian territories. Although Tony Blair has got a good reputation to some degree in the Gulf states and other parts of the Arab world, he certainly doesn't have a good reputation for those on the ground in Gaza and for anyone who's got a memory of what happened under Iraq. So, this idea of an international stabilisation force, Tony Blair being involved with the Board of Peace led by Donald Trump, it does all feel rather Iraq-esque in that sense. If you remember the Coalition Provisional Authority led by Paul Bremer back in 2003, it all is really, it's quite an imposed solution on the Palestinians on Gaza, an international solution devised by the United States and Israel imposed on the Palestinians. And I just can't see it ultimately working in this form. What I could see it as being a starting point for further negotiations. There are some concessions here being made by Israel, and I think it would be good if this deal could be taken to Hamas negotiators and if it could be worked through. I think both sides are ready for a peace deal. It might seem strange to say that given what we're seeing on our TV screens each night, but we're coming up to 2 years of this war and it's just been so destructive and so brutal for both sides. I think that this war can't go on forever, and so I do think we are getting closer to a deal, but it could all end up in tatters if the 72-hour deadline expires and Israel just simply goes in there and becomes even more destructive with Donald Trump's backing.
Well, this war can't go on forever, but tensions in the Middle East have ever since, the Balfour Declaration.
Indeed, and that's it has sort of the I don't know, the rhyme of history, doesn't it? This with Tony Blair coming in as if it's another version of the British Mandate from the early 20th century, with the British coming in and controlling Gaza. It doesn't really sit right. And as I say, I think this deal needs to be taken back to Hamas and worked through. And Donald Trump really has to allow that to happen. If he had any sense that's what he would do and would allow this deal to be taken to Hamas as a starting point and negotiated further, I think Hamas would be open to that. But the whole thing, will be off if Israel is allowed to go in and within 3 days and to really unleash a new wave of destruction with Donald Trump's backing. Hamas is just not going to agree to any peace plan at that point. Remember, we're already up to 66,000 Palestinian lives lost, 80% of buildings destroyed, 90% of the population displaced. I mean, the statistics speak for themselves, really, but yet it could get so much worse, and that's the horrifying fact that we're facing here.
And yet you have to say, what on earth did Hamas expect when they massacred people at a soft targets at a music festival? They knew exactly what they were going to unleash and in fact said so. We wanted to draw attention. Look,
it's been horrific, and in no ways would I ever want to be seen as an apologist for Hamas with what's gone on. And it's horrific, the hostages and what they've been through. So we do need to remember those hostages and what they are still going through. But I think we also need to remember the horrific suffering on the Palestinian side. And it's just been devastating and
coming back to
disproportionate, I would say.
Oh, totally disproportionate. But that's exactly what was to be expected if you did that. On the part of Hamas. They know Israel. They know Benjamin Netanyahu. They know how he operates. But the Palestinian people themselves, they don't get a say, do they? It's just basically Hamas decides for them whether they're going to launch an all-out attack on Israel, whether they accept the peace deal. The people don't have much of a mandate.
Yeah. There's so many innocent victims caught up in this conflict, and this is now an imposed solution that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have come up with. It does have others involved, and there are other Arab states that have looked at this plan to some degree, or looked at versions of the plan. There is some support for it, and as I say, I don't think we should write it off out of hand. Look, a peace is worth striving for, and we need to continue to fight for peace here. If we just reject the deal out of hand without even looking at it and looking at the points, I think we're doing everyone a disservice here. It's very easy to write off this plan because of the involvement of Tony Blair, because of the way that Trump presents it all, and so forth. But I think we should look at the
totally.
points. It's quite a readable plan. I would encourage listeners, if they're interested, go online and have a look at each of the points, see what they think of it.
Yeah.
But I would say, look, another big problem here for Hamas is, what guarantees do they have that once they've handed over the hostages, that Israel won't just renege on the deal? And in the end, it comes back to the trust, and the between the two sides is just not there. So without any guarantees, what's to say that Hamas holds up their end of the deal, or at least with the return of the hostages, and then Israel reneges, and then Hamas doesn't have what they would see as their bargaining chip, these hostages, and Israel just simply goes in there and does what it's doing right now and what it would do if this deal is rejected. So, I think you could start with this deal, but it would need to have a lot more specifics when it comes to the timeline, when it comes to guarantees about how it would actually work for it to be workable in any sense. And that's always going to be the problem when you come in with a big overarching peace deal, rather than simply going for a smaller goal, such as an immediate ceasefire, and then the talk.
And
that's exactly, which is the more conventional way that you stop a war.
There's nothing conventional about this war, though.
Talks.
Nothing conventional about this one. Just finally, though, I would say the one, Tony Blair, Iraq, but then you've also got the Good Friday Agreement.
Indeed. Look.
And I never thought that would end.
Indeed. Look, you need someone who is credible to both sides. So Tony Blair would be acceptable to the Israeli side. I think with the Palestinian side, he's probably not going to be acceptable. I think he's probably a non-starter. He's acceptable to some of the Arab states involved. Some of the Gulf states would accept Tony Blair. He's not perfect, but I think we shouldn't also make the perfect the enemy of the good here. And we're going to have to find a solution to this war one way or the other. It's going to involve a compromise. Compromise is a solution that both sides can live with, but are not entirely happy with. So we've got to find a solution here and a way forward. And in the end, we need peace. And it is as simple and as difficult as that. We need peace. We need a mediated solution somehow to this war, and we need a ceasefire first and foremost.
Good to talk. I thank you for your expertise, Jeffrey Miller. News Talk ZB, it is 11:20.